Alright, after a good amount of time away from YouTube since my last upload, it's time to get back into video making, and to start off my return, let's talk about Isekai. Which is something I don't normally talk about on my channel. Now, I don't outright hate Isekai, but it's something that is definitely beyond saturated. However, with it being so popular as a concept, it has led to some big franchises to take a stab at it themselves, with many making their very own Isekai spin-offs, and in today's video we're going to take a look at 3 of them. These 3 coming from some of my personal favorites, being Baki the Grappler, Fist of the North Star, and Lupin the Third. And to start things off, we have Retsukayo Doesn't Mind Even If It's in Another World, which at first, a Baki the Grappler Isekai just sounds plain crazy. Then again, so is Baki the Grappler itself. Baki borders into supernatural territory, so an Isekai spin-off doesn't sound too far-fetched. As you can tell by the title, Baki's master of Chinese martial arts, Retsukayo, is one day transported to a fantasy world. While understandably a bit confused at first, Retsu quickly realizes the great potential that lies before him. And before getting isekai'd, Retsu fought many talented and monstrous fighters. However, in this world, he can fight real monsters of various myths and legends. And this excites Retsu beyond measure. The man is like a kid in a candy store as he goes up against the likes of hydras and goblins. Retsu soon learns that other people from Earth, from various points of history, have also been sent to this world, being referred to by the locals as strugglers, who upon being brought in can gain magic abilities. Though Retsu, being a proud martial artist, wants nothing of the sort, and makes it his mission to fight every struggler, monster, and warrior that comes across him with his very own abilities. For as outrageous as this concept is, I'm really digging this manga, as it carries the spirit of the mainline Baki series while still feeling pretty unique, and possibly going in a direction I hope mainline Baki eventually heads to at some point. As well, I do like Baki as a series, and it still blows me away time to time with just the pure meat-headed insanity. I have to admit the newest arc is a bit stale, especially considering how intense the last few arcs were with wild men and samurais, to where we currently are as of this recording, which is just going up against a group of sumo wrestlers. Which feels like a step back, whereas this spin-off feels like a step in the right direction. And that's just completely jumping the shark, giving us monsters, mutants, and energy blasts. Like, at this point, fuck it. The Baki characters have already done plenty of superhuman feats, so at this point in time in the series, you might as well actually introduce real superhumans. And thanks to this manga, we get a peek on what a Baki manga would look like with throwing all care and realism out the window. And I have to say, it's awesome. Seeing a lone martial artist beat his way through a fantasy world using nothing but his fists is just really fun. Retsu constantly has to change up his strategy as well as test his limits with each fight. Outside some fights featuring weapons in the main Baki series, Retsu only ever had to worry about the fists and feet of his opponents. However, now Retsu has to factor in armor, regeneration abilities, as well as magic and weaponry he's not used to seeing. While these fights aren't anything too complex, it still is fun to see how one would go against all these monsters and magic completely barehanded. On top of the cool beatdowns and seeing brute human strength overcome fantasy, like Retsu using a goblin as a nunchuck to beat on more goblins. The biggest appeal to the action here, and really this whole manga, is just Retsu's excitement. It's infectious seeing him continuously get hyped with each and every fight. And just when you think this new world has overwhelmed him, he somehow just gets back up with his excitement reignited and more passionate than before. Not only do these fights fuel Retsu's combat curiosity, but some also serve as spiritual rematches. For example, Retsu eventually goes up against an ogre, whose savage nature and raw power reminds him of one of his most deadly opponents in the main Baki series. That led to one of his most brutal losses. And now in this world of fantasy, he can finally have that rematch that never happened. And if you're a Retsukayo fan like me, it makes this manga all the more better, as our boy Retsu here is just living his best life, kicking all sorts of ass. This manga only has a few volumes out at the moment of this recording, but I've had a lot of fun with it. It also has a lot of promise, like potential fights with other strugglers, an old dragon slayer that Retsu's met early on into the series, and just seeing whatever other fantasy creature comes within fighting distance of good old Retsu Kaio. If you're already a Baki fan, this is a must read, as it does an excellent job in taking the hot-blooded insanity of the series and injecting it into an isekai story. Though if you are new to Baki, this one might not be 100% for you, as it does feature some callbacks through its run, a few which are pretty big in terms of spoilers. However, up next we have another manly martial arts series getting the isekai treatment, being Fist of the North Star in... oh boy, this one's a mouthful. A genius isekai overlord legend, Fist of the North Star Amoeba Gaiden. Even if I go to another world, I am a genius. Huh? Was I mistaken? Seriously, these isekai titles are eventually going to be full-on plot summary paragraphs one day. Like Baki the Grappler, Fist of the North Star is an already pretty wild series. I mean, you have a nuclear apocalypse, huge muscle dudes, and martial arts capable of turning anyone into mincemeat. So mixing that vibe with the RPG elements of your typical isekai is bound to have some interesting results. And it's not like North Star already doesn't have its fair share of bizarre spin-offs, like the more comedic DD Fist of the North Star and Strawberry Flavored. Of course, as you could tell by the title of this story, it follows this self-proclaimed genius and martial arts madman, Amoeba, who, after being isekai'd, realizes he can truly be the main character of his own grand adventure. Going from a heavily worn-torn desert wasteland of a world to one full of greenery and easy access food, water, and shelter, Amoeba seems to have hit the jackpot. Sure, there might be monsters roaming around, and children can wield powerful magic, but compared to savage bandits and power-hungry madmen, it's all child's play to him. Unlike Retsu in the Baki spinoff, Amoeba isn't too hung up on learning magic, and while he starts off fairly weak, when combined with his martial arts talent, it makes for a deadly combo, eventually allowing him to hit the pressure points of wrathful spirits. While Amoeba is in a brand new world, a lot of the people and even some of the monsters he comes across bear very similar appearances to ones he's more familiar with the first of his companions basically being isekai versions of Bat and Lin with some personality differences. Amoeba even gets an adventuring party for himself that is made of stock North Star thugs. It's even revealed one of the grand wizards of this world bears a resemblance to Toki, which makes me wonder if there's a legendary hero and demon lord out there that look like Kenshiro and Rao. As of now, I can only find a handful of chapters translated for this manga, so there isn't a whole lot to go off of. But from what I've read here, it seems to be a decently fun series, more focused on the fantasy comedy and adventures, with occasional bits of action. But from where it stands, I might not recommend it as much as the Retsu Kaio spinoff, but if you already are a North Star fan and want more in the vein of DD or Strawberry Flavored, then this should be a good enough read. Now, the last interesting isekai spin-off series we'll be covering in this video will be for the iconic Lupin III series, which honestly I'm kinda surprised it took this long for Lupin to get an isekai series. A franchise that sure mainly follows the stylish exploits of a master thief and his skillful gang around the world, but over the franchise's long run, Lupin and the gang have encountered time travelers, various mythological creatures, actual angels, and the long-lost vampire twin sister of Jesus Christ. So an isekai spin-off isn't too much of a stretch here, but in 2021 we got our Lupin isekai with Lupin III, Neighbor World Princess. Starting off as you would with a lot of Lupin material, with Lupin and the gang stealing some treasure and being chased by Inspector Zenigata. However, the treasure they stole seemed to somehow transport them into another world, with the gang and Zenigata being thrown into different areas. Lupin near a village where he encounters a princess on the run who he decides to help, Goemon in a forest with an elf archer, Jigen in a village of dwarves, Fujiko in a castle which she quickly charms her way through, and of course Zenigata in the kingdom after the runaway princess, which extends to Lupin. Now, out of the 3 isekai manga covered in this video, this was the one I was the most excited for. as I feel like it could lead to a lot of fun, but unfortunately out of the three, this one wound up being my least favorite. I feel that the previous two spin-offs built more on the character's desires, with Retsu pushing his limits to get stronger, and Amiibo working his way to become the legend he's always wanted to be. Whereas here, for Lupin and the gang, it's pretty much business as usual. I guess that could be, as mentioned earlier, Lupin as a series has taken some dips into sci-fi and fantasy, so this world change wouldn't faze them too much. I mean, sure, having them fight dragons and go dungeon crawling is cool, but there's never much of a challenge here for them. Lupin, Jigen, and Goemon all get their own cute girl companions on their journeys too, that don't really add too much to the story. They're not completely useless, as the dwarf girl makes the bullets for Lupin and Jigen, but honestly they feel like they're more here for fan service. Also, a nitpick that bothered me throughout my reading here is while the art is not bad, I just don't like the way Lupin's drawn here. Mainly his hair, as the way it's drawn and the shine on it almost makes it look like some weird helmet, and it just oddly annoyed me every time I read a chapter here. While the manga itself isn't super bad, as a fan of the franchise, it is a little disappointing with this one being another standard Lupin story, stretched for a few volumes, that doesn't take full advantage of the setting. But anyways, with that, we'll wrap it up here. But if you've read any of these series, tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below, or even recommend me some other interesting isekai spin-offs, as I'm sure there's a lot out there. My New Year resolution for 2023 was to get back and be more active on this channel, and while it did take a few months for me to actually come back with new videos, I do have some in a backlog that will hopefully help me maintain a somewhat consistent upload schedule. And also, to be coming very soon, I'm going to be resurrecting my old podcast, the FalconPunch cast, which should be coming out soon. As always, I'm Mr. FalconPunch. I hope you enjoyed this video, stay safe, and peace out.